Hi everyone, good Wednesday afternoon and welcome to Golocal Live. I'm Golocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in. We have a full couple of shows for you this afternoon here. On this one, local author Mark Binder with his latest book, The Misadventures of Rabbi Kibbutz and Mrs. Heipel. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Big book launch this week. Chit-chatting a little bit in the green room. I think I've officially dubbed it the feel-good book of the season. Heading into the holidays. Tell us a little bit about this bookmark.
Bookmark? I've been writing for more than 30 years. I was looking it up. I was the editor of the Rhode Island Jewish Herald back when there were two Jewish newspapers in the state of Rhode Island, one of which was for-profit and weekly. And I was the editor. One day, an article didn't come in. So I had to write a story, and I wrote my first Chelm story. Chelm is a village of fools, kind of like a lot of Chelm stories are very short jokes, but mine quickly turned into characters. And Rabbi Kibbutz didn't appear in the first story, but he was in the second story, and Mrs. Heipel showed up shortly thereafter. And I wrote these stories for years and years and years, and finally realized that they needed to be collected into a book.
And so, multiple stories within this book. What's the reader to expect? Is there a linear progression, or the vignettes that stand on their own?
Yeah, I call it a novel of stories because each one of the stories could be read on its own. But if you start at the front and work your way to the back, it's got an arc and a nice resolution. When I was rummaging through the files last summer, and I found the book, the manuscript, and I read it, and I made myself cry. I was like, who wrote this? It was really good, and I really enjoyed it.
It was me.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about those characters. As you said, on a whim one day, coming up with it. And of course, characters take on a life of their own.
They do.
So introduce us to the rabbi and the missus.
Well, Rabbi Kibbutz is the oldest man in the village. He is the wise rabbi, and he's always been old, and he will always be old. He is never seen as a young person. And Mrs. Heipel, well, she moved to the village. In fact, that's one of the stories in the book. I realized as I was working on the book, she had always been someone who had moved to the village, and we needed the story of how she arrived. So she moves to the village later in her life and opens up a restaurant. Which is crazy because they're in the middle of the Black Forest. Who needs a restaurant? But she makes it work. And they're sort of the people for whom others go for advice. The men go to the rabbi and the women go to Mrs. Heipel.
And so the Misadventures sounds like, again, not on that linear straight line. What are them? Can you give us a little insights into the Misadventures?
Well, one of my favorite stories was, she's a very, very good cook, except for two things she does badly. One of them badly, and one of them has her latkes, which is what they have for Hanukkah. You fry potatoes. If you've never had a latke, think of the McDonald's hash browns, but a lot better. But her latkes are horrible. They're salty, they're greasy, they're often burned, and they smell. And just after they get married, some of the villagers go to the rabbi and say, you got to do something about your wife's latkes. They're killing us. And he goes, I know. And he gets into quite some trouble with that one. So that's one of the stories.
So the little vignettes, the feel-good nature of it. Here we are. It's the fall of 2019. It's an often tense politically
No
charged.
politics in this book. People who know me, I've been involved in politics. None in this book.
Well, I think that might be maybe perhaps even a selling point, if you will, if you're looking for a little
You can give this to
escapism.
anybody, red, blue, black, brown, yellow, green, or pink.
And again, no
Did I miss
politics aside. Is there a little love element involved in this?
Yes. One of the, it doesn't really give anything away. In the middle of the book, they get married. And one of the challenges is she's Mrs. Heipel. She's not, when somebody marries the rabbi, they become the Rebbitzin. It's the title, it's sort of Mrs. And she's not interested in that. In fact, she refuses, which again causes a little bit of a scandal.
So you've, again, written these stories and you've put them together in this compilation here. What's the reaction to readers that you've had so far when they?
Oh, people really like it. I mean, in fact, what was really remarkable to me was my son. He is almost 21 years old, and I gave him a copy of the book to read, and he read it, and he said, he called me up and he said, I cracked up at the end of one of your stories. He's never done that before. I was like, whoa,
He
yeah.
thought Dad was funny.
Yeah, well, and you know, I knew it was a funny story when I wrote it like 10 years ago, but you read the same story for 10 or, for that long and you forget that it actually makes people laugh. It was really nice.
So, feel-good story, local author, local bookstore is carrying the book as well.
It's at Books on the Square in Wayland Square, and in Pawtucket it's Stillwater Books, and of course it's on pretty much every other platform, plus the audiobook. Oh, can I tell you about the audiobook?
Yes, please.
So I'm a storyteller by trade as well as a writer, and I narrated it. Fischl Bresler, who is an amazing local musician, he plays klezmer as well as everything else. We used his music, and it gives the story such a nice feel. It's out on, I like to say Google Play Audiobooks is one of my favorite platforms for things because you don't have to subscribe forever. But it's out on Audible, it's on Amazon, it's on Apple, iTunes, you name it.
And we chit-chatted a little bit about that as well, about 2 hours.
Yeah, the audiobook is 2 hours. The book itself is relatively short. It's a lovely little read, and you can read it in segments too. A lot of my books are designed to be read and then put down and then picked up again.
Little bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
And again, a fun cover. Tell us about the cover art.
The cover art is it's clip art that I got from a synagogue years and years ago. This is meant to be the village.
Okay.
This is a little bit of a snapshot of the village. It's old school.
It's
you
simple.
know, it's simple.
Very,
it's very
very
simple.
simple.
There's no TV. There's no cell phone. They don't have Wi-Fi. They actually don't have indoor plumbing, but we don't really talk about that in the book.
But again, as you've imagined this life between the rabbi and the missus, and again, a very simple look to it. As you said, your son thought a chapter was hilarious. Could you say this is all ages? Is this something a family could possibly read together?
Yes. I was at a conference last night. I was talking about it to people, and somebody said, "Oh, it's a kid's book." I was like, "No. It's an adult book that you can read some of the chapters to kids." I was thinking that any kid that really wants to read a book about two senior citizens having a romance in a world without cell phones, the kids are not going to be drawn to it, but they will enjoy the stories. And one of the powers of storytelling, and I think of books, is it puts you into a world that's not yours. I don't always like to read books about myself.
We're already in this world.
We're here.
We're already here. And then the ebook, we're embarking close to that holiday season. You're in the car for sometimes quite some time, and what's better than an audiobook to
Well, in Rhode Island traffic,
press play.
it would take you like 3 weeks to listen to it. But if you're driving to and from Boston, it's a good commute.
Just trying to get, from East Greenwich to Providence on any given afternoon or on 195.
Exactly.
But the misadventures of Rabbi Kibitz and Mrs. Keipel, anything else you want to share with viewers, Mark, while we have you in studio?
It's a sweet book. It's full of, there's 2 Hanukkah stories, there's a Passover story, there's a Rosh Hashanah story, and there's a few wedding stories. And then there's the workout story, which is a completely unexpected thing.
A workout story.
Yeah, the Helm workout, it's called.
You'll have to read it to believe it, and as Mark said, on all the online platforms, but of course you want to support local Books on the Square and Stillwater Books here in Rhode Island. So Mark Binder, thank you for taking the time to come in, and thank you for watching. We're going to get a little more in-depth with some healthcare and the latest from the Fed at 4 o'clock when you see us pop up. So be sure to join us when you see us back online. I'm Golocal News Editor Kate Nagel.
I'm Mark Binder.